The Department of Health says the decision to close all COVID-19 quarantine centres is because they don't have an impact anymore. It says people who are vaccinated and unvaccinated during this period are not symptomatic. Contact tracing will also be stopped with immediate effect, except where there is cluster outbreaks. Deputy Health Minister Dr. Sibongiseni Dhlobo says all those infected with COVID-19 should return to work after 8 or 10 days of isolation. He also says no further testing is required after the isolation period. 5 provincial education departments face legal action from the SA Human Rights Commission over the constant issue of pit latrines at schools. The Commission warned yesterday that a lack of access to sufficient water and decent sanitation violates several basic human rights. All right, we are now joined by education activist and deputy chairperson of the Foundation for Education and Social Justice, Mr. Hendrik Makaneta. Mr. Makaneta, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us and a warm welcome to Full View. Mr. Makaneta, please unmute your device. We're not able to hear you.
All right, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Very good evening to you, sir, and a warm welcome. Now, please take us through this court case, this legal action from the South African Human Rights Commission.
Well, I did not grasp your question as I was just trying to increase my volume. I'm sure that you can hear me now.
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Just give us some background as to the legal action instituted by the South African Human Rights Commission with regards to the issue of pit latrines.
Well, it should be very clear at this point that the South African Human Rights Commission has taken the right decision to go to court. But we as activists in the terrain of education want to indicate that the decision is rather late because it comes at a time when we have already lost a number of learners in schools. You'll remember that Michael Komape, may his soul rest in peace, died at a school in a pit latrine some years back. And of course, we also called upon government to deal with this issue and address it once and for all. You'll recall that thereafter there was a summit that was held where President Ramaphosa committed himself that he will be able to address the issue. But as we speak now, we are sitting with a new deadline. The government was not able to deliver on its initial mandate. Only a few pit latrines were addressed in several schools. But as we speak, there's a new deadline of 2023, something which I think should be accepted as part and parcel of those processes that are required to address these norms and standards.
Mr. Makaneta, you mentioned only a few pit latrines that have been addressed. I mean, why is it only a few, given the high number of deaths that has been reported as a result of the issue of pit latrines at South African schools? And who should be held liable and responsible for this?
Well, only the Department of Basic Education can answer why there are few pit latrines that have been eradicated. And of course, government needs to take blame. You are correct, it has been too long that our learners and teachers have been subjected to this high level of indignity. And only government can take the blame. Because if you look at the minimum norms and standards for public school infrastructure, they are very clear. They state that all schools must have sufficient number of sanitation facilities and that pit latrines are not allowed, and that all schools must adhere to the requirements as well as the principles of this universal design. So the minister in this case needs to take responsibility. We have also called upon the Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Basic Education to summon the Basic Education Minister to Parliament so that she can be able to answer for some of this work that has not been done to date. But I think that what is encouraging is that we have been able to move from point A to point B, and currently we are looking forward to the total eradication of pit toilets in 2023. But of course, the Human Rights Commission, much as it must be appreciated, I think that they must be proactive as well and not wait for learners to die until they take action. We have got a problem in this country where we wait for problems to take place and then respond. The Human Rights Commission, as a vanguard of the rights of learners and teachers, should have long taken a decision to ensure that this matter is settled once and for all.
Well, for each provincial department to identify schools with the inadequate sanitation and the cost plans, the installations thereof and the time it'll take, it requires the collaborative effort of all stakeholders, including the schools, I mean the SGBs and all the other stakeholders involved. So do you see a collaboration between the government and the stakeholders, including the SGBs in this particular instance?
Well, what I can see is that there is maximum participation of school governing bodies throughout the country. But the key thing that we see here is the whole issue of, availability of funds. We have stated it in the past, or we have located. We have seen that government alone was not going to be able to resolve some of these questions. Hence, we also called for the involvement of the private sector. But unfortunately, the private sector has not been coming to the stage as well to come and try and resolve some of these issues. So when it comes to SGBs, yes, they are there, they participate. But of course, if you look at this whole issue, CP, you'll realize that communities where these pit latrines are found, even those communities also make use of pit latrines at home. What is happening here is that learners, even schools where pit latrines have been eradicated, learners will go home and continue to use pit latrines at home. What does this tell us? This actually tells us that South Africa still faces the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, as well as inequality. And I think that the DBE alone may not be able to resolve all of these issues. It needs a multi-dimensional approach where all departments, be it health, education, finance, in the form of the National Treasury, must also come on board to identify some of these issues with a view to resolving them. And I know that COVID-19 as well caught all of us unprepared, hence there was a delay as far as we received the reports from the DBE. But I think perhaps what we need to do as society is to wait for 2023. I know that it's in the next 24 months. Let's see what happens. If the case is something else, but I think that from what we are getting, the government is committed to ensuring that by 2023, the pit toilets will be eradicated in our schools.
Well, it will be a rather long wait, but wait we will. We'll definitely wait and see. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much indeed.
All right, thank you. That was Hendrik Maganeta, the education activist and deputy chairperson of the Foundation for Education and Social Justice, just commenting on the issue of pit latrines. We know that the South African Human Rights Commission has, has taken 5 education departments over the issue of pit latrines. They've taken them to court and instituted legal action on this.